We're going to be talking about the big one today, G-O-D, God.
God!
God!
Oh my God.
God.
No! God, please, no!
Meaning in life beyond the temporal, the material, the reducible. Jesus, Allah, the Native American Guadalupe with a bald eagle.
Life is reducible to some basic facts, yet we have 8 billion people all living very distinct lives.
Every prayer I've made, shockingly, has been answered.
Like, whoa!
There's a lot out there that we can't understand. We struggle to understand quantum reality. We struggle to understand what it means to have multiple dimensions. We even struggle to understand how time works.
What I experienced over the last month was a straight up trip. I had run out of reasons why I was living. I was not open-minded about God. God had to show me things that really had a burden of proof above all other theory I had considered.
One of the key concepts in religion is humility and knowing that there's a great mystery.
God is petting me.
Skål.
Skål. I am a lifelong skeptic and atheist who over the last year had what I consider to be an encounter with the reality of prayer and then my own experiences with God. This is for people like me who are on the fence, who are wondering what their meaning was. I was looking everywhere, whether it be community, creativity, self-help trends, personal fitness and health, relationships, starting a family. I was looking for that meaty meaning that I had seen, honestly, in religious people's faces. You ever seen them, how much they smile? It's like, what are you on? And they're not on anything. Here's Dad. This is Jeff and I's dad, Daniel Green. But we haven't decided what to do with these ashes, but we like to keep them around. And this is a man who had an outsized impact on us, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Dad was an investigative journalist, a colleague of big names like Hunter Thompson.
You dirty animal!
And we grew up just hearing amazing stories about the power of the truth, journalism, and what he called realism. And Dad was actually really my role model growing up and what I considered to be what I wanted to be in a man.
He was a very curious guy. He would sit down with real life self-proclaimed vampires and go investigate ghost stories and talk to would-be assassins and alternative personalities of all stripes.
Just our hope for this podcast is to remain open, remain skeptical. We'll talk about what's happened to me in the last month, which has been very striking and has led to the second great transformation of my life, which I've been talking about on social media for 3 years. It's finally here. Give me some. We like to go off the beaten path and really describe what leads to a good life. My tagline there is the best ideas that lead to a good life. Transformation is another thing I'm really interested in. Muhammad Ali, when I found out that his confidence came from a devout belief in Allah, I was like, oh shoot, that's not something I have or I'll ever have. And I wonder what that's like. My goal is not to convert anyone here. My goal, as always with the channel, is to share good ideas that have had a transformative effect on my life. And I think I know what Muhammad Ali was feeling. I'm about 4 times as kind. I'm about 4 times as energetic, 4 times as giving. I cannot give enough information about how much I look down on religion. I would often say, F Jesus, just because I was so sure and so into myself, I was basically toying and saying, strike me down if you're there. So let's start with my spiritual awakening. About a year and a half ago, during the pandemic, as most of you, if you watch my videos, every video is, I just did this, I went through this, I crashed my car. There was a cycle of unfortunate events for about 3 years. That's why I haven't posted as much as I normally do. At that time, I made what I call the Rationalists Prayer. The Rationalist Prayer is when you turn to God and you say, listen, I don't believe in you. I've never have. You've never shown me. Why would you give me this mind and then not fulfill my desire to have evidence and see things that I believe? But I'm running out of ideas. And if you're there, I need you to bring my girlfriend back. I need $100,000. I need the best editor I've ever had, very disciplined. I need the greatest discipline I've ever had because I'm gonna need these things to keep her. And we'll start with that. And by the way, even if you give them to me, I might not believe in you anyway. Okay, so see ya. And it took me a year. It took me until a month ago in a casual conversation to realize, holy shit, all of those things happened in about 2 months. And I didn't even notice because some of those things were taken back away after a while. At that point, I would say about a month ago, I would call it a rock bottom, but the best way to describe it is I had run out of reasons why I was living. But after remembering that series of prayers and realizing how much resentment I had inside, I said, okay, I need to forgive. I've heard that, right? You do it for yourself even more than the other person. Easier said than done, though.
Forgiveness is the big thing with Christianity.
As Blake said, who did my ceremony of faith beautiful in front of my family yesterday, it's their brand.
Yeah,
Forgiveness,
it's the whole thing.
Forgiveness is the brand.
It's a differentiator.
So that caused me to say, I don't want to read the Bible, but I want to read what Jesus said. Immediately a transformation started in my life. That particular story provided with me a teacher and a way of living in the modern world that I've begun testing, that I could summarize as he would love first and he would tell the truth. And with that, and the prayers that I started to do with more belief, I started to notice what I call serendipities. You might call them miracles. And they got from 1 to 2 to about 10 a day. And that has continued daily. Quite immediately, I stopped drinking alcohol, smoking weed. I stopped fapping, as the kids call it. I began thinking about a family. I found that I was giving money to the homeless and my attention and love and time. I was smiling all day long. I wasn't sleeping very much. I didn't seem to need to sleep anymore. I was calling my family members and crying and telling them how much I love them. I was beginning to plan beautiful ceremonies and ways that I could share and express my gratitude to people. I was forgiving my enemies. I was doing a lot in a month, and it hasn't stopped. And it's been the greatest blessing in my life. I call this the greatest period of my life. And it was the why I was looking for. It was the second great transformation.
I have not been a real follower of organized religion in my life. What I'm skeptical of is how religion takes spiritual truths or spiritual ideas and translates them into human life. Religion is sociological. It's human culture. The way it's manifested in human culture is unfortunately often rather regrettable, problematic, if you want to put it that way. Religion comes from this strange dilemma that people are. We're a little too smart for our own good. We have big brains. We're very clever. We can think a lot. We can be very introspective. We can grasp abstract concepts. But we're also meat sacks who die. You know, you're born into the world, you grow up, you feel pain, you feel joy. Eventually you're going to expire. We are aware of this our whole lives. Augustine is 3 years old. He's already starting to grasp at the idea of death. But my point is, we really struggle. Being in that state is hard because your mind is limitless and yet your experience feels too limited. It feels too limited.
Whoa.
But I think that every human endeavor is going to hit a limit where, like, beyond this, somewhere way beyond this is the truth, and this is the limit of what we can handle. And whether that's religious truth or scientific truth or artistic truth, it's an attempt to get to that beyond that we can't quite understand because we're just a little too limited. So when you look at the Abrahamic faith, they all grew out of the same branch. So they're different branches of the same tree. And yet, historically, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of violence even, and there's tension even today. But a lot of the same ideas are there in the three. Because of course they are. They're brothers or cousins or siblings. In Christianity, obviously Jesus Christ has a very central position within Christianity. But in Islam, Jesus was not only a prophet in Islam mentioned in the Quran, but he is the second most important prophet in Islam.
Often when I talk to atheists, they invoke, just follow your conscience. Why do we have a conscience?
Give the evolutionary argument for that. It's because it's useful to have a conscience.
Now, is it useful to know that certain things are beautiful and certain things are not? Is it useful to have all of the intermediary steps necessary to go from a rock covered in different elements to everything we see today? Could that have happened without some intelligence within the framework of the universe? Could an explosion like the Big Bang coalesce into everything over many billion years without any guiding principle? Could the DNA evolve into everything that it is without some kind of correlation to a code or an intelligence? If you spread it out, it could go to the moon and back. For some people, it suggests intelligence. For you, maybe it doesn't.
Well, a code is different from intelligence, right? Because you can have a galactic constant, like rules for the universe, without intelligence. And you can have
laws of nature, they're often called.
Yeah, which laws suggest that somebody made those laws, but they could also just be the aspects of existence, their emergent properties.
And that's kind of the debate we're having with consciousness too. This brain, I mean, these intensely complicated, well-functioning aspects of reality coming out of an explosion that is speeding up past the speed of light. One thing I've noticed from studying the philosophy of science is that that moment of eureka is often described by a lot of great thinkers as not coming from me, but almost like a muse. Like I channeled something through me that was almost the final form of the theory. And I can't say that I went on a purely rigorous scientific process of, test possibility 1, and then 2, and then 3. If there were an intelligence principle, and maybe that can be a starting point for a rationalist to say, do I see evidence of order within something that should be much more chaotic? Something that should be much more unlikely.
But here's the third.
And if that is real, could we test that?
Here's the third possibility. There's information coded into the universe, and therefore the universe is, for lack of a better metaphor, a bit of a computation machine. But that doesn't require a personalized, conscious prime mover.
Could a prime mover emerge from that?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about a few of the wackadoodle versions of God that I think are very helpful for non-theists. We all imagine simulation theory. We all, and very, very avid scientists, acknowledge probabilistically that's pretty much a done deal.
My perception was that Larry was not taking AI safety seriously enough. Once sort of digital superintelligence, basically digital God.
What you're saying is that God could emerge from a lot of different sources. Even human beings could create God. But it's also important to think about, what are we actually talking about when we talk about God? What is God? What do you mean by God? I think it's almost a metaphor for the relationship between a parent and a child.
It is.
Because, I've got a 3-year-old right now. I have to be there with him all the time and kind of give him a little guidance. But already at 3 years old, I'm like, you know this. You got this.
I go to Google and I'll Google, should I clean my room Bible? And I'll get commentary from hundreds of different people and all these different definitions of the biblical passages.
Devin, again,
it's a conversation.
The Bible doesn't have instructions for everything, because if you believe you were created in God's image,
yes,
and you are given free will and moral responsibility, you can answer the question of whether you can clean your room.
We're not going to tell you if you got to have a clean room or not, but if you're doing it for good reasons to help others, that brought it down to the principles. So it's a dialogue that you have with the commentary community, with the church, with the Bible itself, with your own prayer, with your own experience. It's just another set of tools for guidance that is a lot like what you might imagine the perfect father would be, or Jesus is like a perfect older brother to me. He's like having you, and I can't call you every day I have a problem. You know what I mean?
And I can't control your life, but what you can do is you can ask me, what do you think about this? And I can reframe it. I can try to give some other perspective. The end result of studying a lot of this stuff, and I think, you know, Mom's a teacher. She could tell you, you give a semester of instruction to a class of strangers.
Yep.
And they're not going to remember most of the things that you say.
Right.
And you certainly can't give them instructions for every single aspect, even within that subject, for the rest of their life. But what you can do is you can guide them towards principles and ways of thinking.
Those principles, love first. Don't wait for somebody to love you first. It's not reciprocal. Loving first will create miracles in your life. It'll allow you to tell the truth. My dream my whole life was to love, be loved, and tell the truth. You can do those things. These higher powers, these spiritual conversations with people who have done it for a long time or you admire, big picture conversations will help you learn how to do those two things, and that creates a good life. And the third is you don't have to be afraid. You have to be afraid of what you do if you live a very selfish, dominating, dehumanizing existence. And that's why ultimately I pray for people who have hurt me. Because I'm genuinely so believing in the good and the love that helps people prosper. I'm worried about selfish people. I'm worried about what they're going to have to lose to find peace. That was a relief from any resentment I had that made forgiveness very easy. Wouldn't you say you've been seeing the spirit in me, if you could call it that word? Like, there's been a difference, right?
Yeah.
A before and after?
Yes. You're much more open and also more humble. And I think that's key, because you're searching for something, but you're not trying to like find the answer so that you can tell everyone what the answer is.
Yeah.
You're really trying to find the answer just so you can live better.
Wow.
And I think that's key. I think the humility is very important, because again, we don't know things.
If I'm seeking, if I'm unlocking, if you're unlocking, the future is going to be grand, and I want to share every bit of it with people like me who are suffering like I was for many, many years, and still will, and still am in some ways. But there's hope. Anything is possible. It starts with humility and appreciation. And don't be so busy. Anyway, let's go see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with Augustine.